It was an ordinary Tuesday morning in Chicago when Officer Daniel Morrison and his equine partner Dakota were patrolling Grant Park. Dakota was a dark bay mare with 12 years of impeccable service in the mounted police. Known for her calm demeanor and obedience, she had never caused any problems throughout her entire career. But that morning, something changed completely. At 9:15 in the morning, as they followed the paved trail near Buckingham Fountain, Dakota stopped abruptly, her hooves fixed to the ground as if they had grown roots. Officer Morrison, experienced with 15 years in the mounted unit, tried everything he knew. He gently squeezed his legs, clicked his tongue, even offered her favorite treats from his pocket. Nothing worked. Dakota simply refused to move. "Come on, girl. What's going on?" Morrison whispered, patting her neck. He could feel her muscles tensed beneath his hand, her ears rotating frantically in all directions. Something had spooked her, but he couldn't see anything unusual around them. Other morning joggers passed by, some stopping to take photos of the police horse, thinking it was just a photo opportunity. Children pointed excitedly while their parents smiled. Nobody understood that something was terribly wrong. Morrison radioed for backup. "Unit 7 to dispatch. I've got a situation at Grant Park, east side of Buckingham Fountain. My horse won't move. Requesting supervisor assistance." The dispatcher's voice crackled back. "Copy that, Unit 7. Supervisor en route. Everything okay there?" "I'm not sure," Morrison admitted, his concern growing. In all his years working with Dakota, he had never seen her behave this way. Police horses were trained to handle crowds, loud noises, even riot situations. For Dakota to simply freeze like this meant something was seriously wrong. Within minutes, Sergeant Patricia Hayes arrived in a patrol car. She had been Morrison's supervisor for the past 6 years and knew both him and Dakota well. As she approached, she immediately noticed the tension in the horse's posture. "How long has she been like this?" Hayes asked, circling around Dakota carefully. "About 20 minutes now," Morrison replied, his hand still stroking Dakota's neck in an attempt to calm her. "She just stopped dead in her tracks. Won't respond to any commands." Hayes studied the area carefully. The park looked completely normal. Families enjoying the morning, tourists taking pictures, the fountain spraying water in its usual spectacular display. There were no loud noises, no visible threats, nothing that would explain Dakota's behavior. "Have you checked her for injuries?" Hayes asked. "First thing I did. No heat in her legs, no signs of pain. She's just frozen." That's when Hayes noticed something strange. Dakota's head was positioned at an odd angle, not looking forward like a spooked horse typically would, but down and slightly to the left. Her nostrils were flaring, taking in deep breaths, but her eyes weren't wide with fear. Instead, she seemed intensely focused on something. "Dan, I think she's trying to tell us something," Hayes said slowly, following Dakota's line of sight. Morrison had worked with enough police dogs to understand that trained animals sometimes sensed things humans couldn't. "You think she's alerting to something? Look at her. This isn't fear. This is determination." Hayes knelt down, trying to see what Dakota was looking at. The horse's gaze seemed fixed on a storm drain about 15 feet away, partially hidden by an ornamental bush. It was one of dozens that dotted the park, designed to handle Chicago's heavy rainfall. "Stay here," Hayes instructed, standing up and walking toward the drain. As she got closer, she heard something that made her blood run cold. A faint, muffled sound, almost like crying. She pulled out her flashlight and shone it into the drain. At first, she saw nothing but darkness and debris. Then about 6 feet down, the light reflected off something. 2 small, terrified eyes staring back at her. "Oh my God!" Hayes breathed. "Dan, call for rescue units now. There's a child down here." Morrison immediately grabbed his radio while Hayes dropped to her stomach, trying to get a better look. "Hey, sweetheart, can you hear me? My name is Patricia. I'm a police officer. We're going to get you out of there, okay?" A weak, frightened voice echoed up from the drain. "Help me. Please help me." Hayes's heart raced. "How did you get down there, honey?" I was chasing my ball. I fell in. I've been here all night." All night. The words hit Hayes like a punch. This child had been trapped in a storm drain, in the dark, alone, for hours. And if Dakota hadn't stopped exactly where she did, if she hadn't refused to move, they might have walked right past. By now, a crowd had gathered. Morrison had dismounted and was helping to keep people back, while simultaneously coordinating the emergency response. Fire trucks, ambulances, and additional police units were racing toward their location. Dakota remained exactly where she had stopped, her head still turned toward the drain, as if standing guard over the child she had sensed. Morrison walked back to her, his eyes wet with emotion. "Good girl," he whispered, pressing his forehead against hers. "Such a good girl." The Chicago Fire Department arrived within 6 minutes. Captain Robert Chen and his team immediately assessed the situation. The storm drain was part of the city's old infrastructure, narrow and deep, with water at the bottom from the previous night's rain. "We need to move fast," Chen announced, looking at the darkening sky. "Weather report says more rain in the next hour. If this drain fills up..." He didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone understood the urgency. The rescue team worked with precision born from years of experience, but the old storm drain presented unique challenges. The opening was barely 2 feet wide, too narrow for an adult firefighter in full gear to descend safely. The walls were slick with algae and decades of accumulated grime, making any descent treacherous. "We need our smallest team member," Chen said, looking at his crew. A young firefighter named Sarah Mitchell stepped forward. At 5'2" and barely 110 pounds, she was often called upon for confined space rescues. "I can do it, Captain," Mitchell said, already strapping on a harness. Meanwhile, Hayes remained at the drain opening, keeping the child calm. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Emma," came the trembling reply. "Emma Rodriguez. I'm 7 years old." "Emma, that's a beautiful name. You're being so brave. We're sending someone down to get you right now, okay? Her name is Sarah, and she's really nice." "I'm scared. It's dark down here, and cold." "I know, baby, but you're going to be okay. Can you tell me if you're hurt anywhere?" There was a pause. "My leg hurts, and my head. I hit it when I fell." Hayes exchanged a worried glance with the paramedics who had just arrived. A head injury after an entire night in a cold, damp drain could mean hypothermia, possible concussion, or worse. Mitchell was already being lowered into the drain, a powerful headlamp illuminating the darkness below. The crowd had grown to over 100 people, all watching in tense silence. News crews had arrived and were setting up cameras at a respectful distance. Morrison stood beside Dakota, who hadn't moved an inch. Other officers had offered to take her back to the stable, but Morrison refused. "She stays," he said firmly. "She found Emma. She deserves to see this through." As if understanding, Dakota let out a soft nicker, her ears still pinned toward the drain. Inside the narrow shaft, Mitchell descended slowly. The smell was overwhelming, stagnant water, rust and decay. Her headlamp finally illuminated a small figure huddled against the curved wall of the drain, partially submerged in about a foot of cold water. "Hi, Emma," Mitchell said, keeping her voice calm and friendly. "I'm Sarah. I'm going to get you out of here, okay?" Emma looked up, her face streaked with tears and dirt. She was wearing a pink t-shirt and jeans, both soaked through. She was shivering violently, her lips tinged blue. She had been holding onto a metal rung embedded in the wall, the only thing that had kept her from sliding further down where the water was deeper. "My leg," Emma whimpered. "I can't move it." Mitchell carefully maneuvered closer, the space so tight she could barely turn. She examined Emma's leg with gentle hands and immediately saw the problem. The child's left leg was wedged between two pieces of debris, an old grate and what looked like a broken bicycle frame that had been washed into the drain system. "Emma, you did such a good job holding on. You're so strong," Mitchell radioed up to Chen. "Captain, we've got a complication. Her leg is trapped. I need cutting tools." The news sent a wave of concern through the rescue team. Every minute that passed increased the risk. The sky was growing darker and the first drops of rain began to fall. Chen made a quick decision. "Lower the hydraulic cutters. Mitchell, you'll have to work fast." Within the drain, Mitchell received the compact cutting tool. The space was so confined she could barely position it properly. Emma was crying now, terrified by the noise and situation. "Emma, listen to me," Mitchell said firmly but kindly. "I need you to be brave for just a few more minutes. This tool is going to make some loud noises, but it's going to free your leg. Can you be brave for me?" Emma nodded, tears streaming down her face. "My mommy. I want my mommy. We're going to get you to your mommy very soon, I promise." Above ground, Hayes was already on her phone with the Chicago Police Department's missing persons unit. "Run a check for Emma Rodriguez, 7 years old, possibly reported missing last night." The response came back within seconds. "We have a report. Maria Rodriguez filed a missing persons report at 8 p.m. yesterday. Her daughter Emma disappeared from Maggie Daly Park around 6 p.m. The mother is at home, 2847 North Sheffield Avenue." Hayes immediately dispatched an officer to bring Maria Rodriguez to Grant Park, then returned to the drain opening. The rain was falling steadier now, and she could hear the hydraulic cutters whining from below. In the drain, Mitchell worked the cutters with surgical precision. The old bicycle frame was corroded and cut through relatively easily, but the metal grate was thicker, stronger. Sparks flew in the confined space. Emma squeezed her eyes shut, her small hands covering her ears. "Almost there, Emma, almost there," Mitchell encouraged, sweat mixing with rain on her face despite the cold. With a final metallic snap, the grate broke free. Emma's leg was released, and Mitchell immediately felt along it carefully. "Possible fracture, definitely severe bruising," she reported. "But she's free. Bringing her up now." Mitchell secured Emma in a special pediatric rescue harness, wrapping her own jacket around the shivering child. "Okay, baby, hold on tight to me. We're going up." The team above began pulling them up slowly, carefully. The rain was falling harder now, and they could hear water beginning to rush through the storm drain system. Another few minutes, and the drain would have started flooding with Emma, still trapped inside. As Mitchell and Emma emerged from the drain, the crowd erupted in applause and cheers. Paramedics rushed forward immediately, wrapping Emma in heated blankets and beginning their assessment. The child was hypothermic, exhausted, dehydrated and injured, but she was alive. Dakota let out a loud whinny as if celebrating the successful rescue. Morrison hugged her neck, his emotions overwhelming him. "You saved her, girl. You saved that little girl's life." An ambulance was ready to transport Emma to Lurie Children's Hospital. As the paramedics loaded her onto a gurney, a police car screeched to a halt nearby. A woman burst out, screaming Emma's name. "Mommy!" Emma cried out, reaching toward her mother. Maria Rodriguez ran to the ambulance, sobbing uncontrollably. "My baby! Oh God, my baby!" She climbed in beside her daughter, clutching her hand. "I thought I'd lost you. I looked everywhere, everywhere." "A horse found me, Mommy," Emma said weakly. "A big brown horse." Maria looked confused until Hayes approached the ambulance. "Mrs. Rodriguez, your daughter is right. Our police horse, Dakota, is the one who found Emma. She refused to move until we discovered your daughter in the storm drain." Maria looked over at Dakota, still standing exactly where she had stopped hours earlier. Tears streamed down her face as she climbed back out of the ambulance for a moment and walked to the horse. She placed both hands on Dakota's face. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for saving my daughter." The ambulance pulled away, sirens wailing, carrying Emma and her mother to the hospital. The crowd that had gathered began to disperse slowly, many people stopping to take photos of Dakota or to thank Officer Morrison and the rescue team. News helicopters circled overhead, capturing footage that would soon be broadcast around the world. Captain Chen approached Morrison, his equipment still dripping with drain water. "That's one incredible horse you have there, officer. In 23 years of rescue work, I've never seen anything like this." Morrison nodded, still stroking Dakota's neck. "She's special, always has been, but today she proved just how special." Sergeant Hayes was already fielding calls from reporters and city officials. The mayor's office wanted a statement. The police chief was on his way, but Hayes's focus remained on understanding exactly what had happened. "Dan, walk me through it one more time," she said, pulling out her notebook. "From the moment Dakota stopped." Morrison recounted the morning, his voice steady despite his exhaustion. "We were on our regular route. Dakota's been down this path 1,000 times, but right here, exactly here, she just planted her hooves and wouldn't budge. At first I thought maybe she was spooked by something, but there was no fear in her body language. She was alert, focused, determined. Her head kept turning toward that drain, her nostrils flaring like she was tracking a scent." "Police horses aren't trained for search and rescue," Hayes noted. "No, they're not. But Dakota came from a ranch before she joined the force. Her mother was used for search and rescue in Colorado mountain operations. Maybe it's in her bloodline, something instinctual that kicked in." A veterinarian from the mounted unit, Dr. Elizabeth Park, had arrived to check on Dakota. She performed a thorough examination while Morrison explained what had happened. "Her vital signs are perfect," Dr. Park said, amazed. "But look at this. Her stress hormones would typically be elevated after standing still for this long in a high-pressure situation. Instead, they're normal. It's as if she knew exactly what she was doing and remained calm throughout. This is remarkable animal intelligence we're seeing here." By now, the rain had stopped, and a weak sun was breaking through the clouds. The storm drain crew was already placing warning barriers and safety covers over the drain opening. An investigation would be launched into how a child could fall into an inadequately secured storm drain in a public park. Morrison's radio crackled. It was the police chief himself, Commander James Walsh. "Morrison, I'm 5 minutes out. Don't go anywhere. And give that horse an extra apple from me." When Walsh arrived, he was accompanied by several city officials and a public information officer. The commander was a tall man in his 60s, with silver hair and a no-nonsense demeanor that had earned him respect throughout the department. But as he approached Dakota, his expression softened. "Officer Morrison, Sergeant Hayes, I've been briefed on what happened here today," Walsh said. "This is extraordinary, truly extraordinary." He turned to Dakota, placing a hand on her shoulder. "This horse has brought honor to our department and, more importantly, saved a child's life." A reporter from a local news station had been given permission to approach. "Commander Walsh, what happens now? Will Dakota receive any recognition for her actions?" Walsh smiled. "Absolutely. We have protocols for commendations, but I'll be honest, we've never given one to a horse before. That's going to change. Dakota will be recognized as a hero, just like any officer who saves a life." The story spread rapidly. Within hours, footage of Dakota standing guard over the storm drain was trending on social media. News outlets around the world picked up the story. "Police horse refuses to move, saves trapped child" became a headline that captivated millions. At Lurie Children's Hospital, Emma Rodriguez was being treated for hypothermia, dehydration, a fractured tibia, and a mild concussion. Doctors said she was incredibly lucky. Another hour in that drain, especially with the rain coming, and the outcome could have been tragically different. Maria Rodriguez gave an emotional interview from the hospital. "Yesterday was the worst day of my life. Emma was playing in Maggie Daly Park while I was watching from a bench. I looked away for just a moment to answer a phone call. When I looked back, she was gone. We searched everywhere. The playground, the gardens, the pathways. We called police immediately. They brought dogs, searched for hours, but nobody thought to check the storm drains." She paused, wiping tears from her eyes. "That horse, Dakota, she didn't give up. Even when everyone walked past that drain, she knew. Somehow she knew my baby was down there. I will be grateful to her for the rest of my life." The investigation revealed that Emma had been chasing a ball that rolled near the drain. The safety grate, which should have been securely fastened, had been damaged and displaced during a recent maintenance operation, but hadn't been properly replaced. Emma stepped on what she thought was solid ground and fell through the opening into the drain system below. She had screamed for help, but the sound hadn't carried far enough for anyone to hear. As evening fell and the park emptied, she was left alone in the darkness, holding onto that metal rung, praying someone would find her. "I sang songs to myself," Emma would later tell reporters from her hospital bed. "Songs my mommy taught me, and I prayed. I prayed that someone would come, and then I heard hooves. I heard a horse, and I knew someone was there." The city moved quickly to inspect and secure every storm drain in Chicago's park system. What had been overlooked for years suddenly became a priority. Emma's accident, while traumatic, would prevent future tragedies. 3 days after the rescue, Dakota was invited to visit Emma in the hospital. Morrison carefully led her through the special freight entrance. The hospital had made an exception to their no animals policy for this particular hero. When Emma saw Dakota walking down the hallway, her face lit up with pure joy. "It's her! It's the horse who saved me!" Dakota was brought into Emma's room, where the little girl sat propped up in bed, her leg in a cast covered with drawings and signatures. Maria stood beside her, holding her daughter's hand. Emma reached out, and Dakota gently moved her head forward, allowing the child to stroke her nose. "Thank you for finding me," Emma whispered. "You're the best horse in the whole world." Morrison had to blink back tears. He had seen Dakota work for years, had trusted her in countless situations, but this moment crystallized everything he'd always known about his partner. She wasn't just a police horse, she was a guardian with an extraordinary gift. The following week, a formal ceremony was held at Chicago Police Headquarters. Dakota became the first horse in the department's history to receive the Medal of Valor, typically reserved for officers who risked their lives to save others. The medal was attached to a special collar made just for her. Commander Walsh read the commendation. "For extraordinary heroism and unwavering dedication to duty, Police Horse Dakota demonstrated exceptional instinct and determination that directly resulted in the rescue of 7-year-old Emma Rodriguez. Her actions exemplify the highest standards of service and remind us that heroism comes in many forms." The ceremony was attended by hundreds, including Emma and her mother. Emma, now on crutches, approached Dakota and placed a crown of flowers around her neck, a gift she had made herself. "You're a princess horse now," Emma announced proudly, causing laughter and applause from the crowd. But perhaps the most touching moment came from Officer Morrison's speech. "I've worked with Dakota for 8 years. In that time we've patrolled countless miles, managed hundreds of crowds, and faced numerous challenging situations. But I never truly understood the depth of her intelligence and compassion until that Tuesday morning. Dakota didn't just refuse to move. She made a choice. She chose to trust her instincts, to stand her ground despite my commands, because she knew something I didn't. She knew a child was in danger." He paused, emotion thick in his voice. "We often talk about the bond between officers and their canine partners, But we don't talk enough about the horses who serve alongside us. These animals give us their strength, their loyalty, their trust. And sometimes, like Dakota showed us, they give us miracles. The story of Dakota and Emma continued to resonate far beyond Chicago. Animal behaviorists studied the case, trying to understand how Dakota detected Emma's presence. Some theorized she heard sounds humans couldn't. Others suggested she smelled the child, despite the overwhelming odors from the drain. A few believed it was something more instinctual, something science couldn't fully explain. Dr. Jennifer Martinez, an equine behavior specialist from Cornell University, offered her perspective. Horses have evolved over millions of years to be highly attuned to their environment. They can detect subtle changes in air pressure, temperature, and electromagnetic fields. They can hear frequencies beyond human range and smell compounds at concentrations we could never perceive. But beyond these physical abilities, horses are also deeply empathetic creatures. They bond with humans in ways that suggest emotional intelligence we're only beginning to understand. Dakota's actions suggest she not only detected Emma's presence, but understood the urgency of the situation and made a conscious decision to alert her handler. For Morrison, the explanations didn't matter as much as the outcome. Emma was alive and recovering. Dakota had proven that the partnership between humans and animals in law enforcement was more powerful than anyone had imagined. The mounted police unit saw a surge in public support following Dakota's rescue. Funding that had been threatened was restored. New horses were added to the program, and Dakota became the face of the unit, appearing at schools and community events to teach children about safety and the important work police horses do. Emma Rodriguez recovered fully from her physical injuries, though she occasionally had nightmares about the storm drain. Her mother enrolled her in therapy to help process the trauma, and gradually the nightmares faded. What remained was a deep love for horses and a particular affection for Dakota. Maria and Emma visited Morrison and Dakota regularly at the police stables. Emma would bring carrots and apples, spending hours brushing Dakota's coat and talking to her about school, friends, and her dreams. It was clear that the bond between the child and the horse had become something profound and healing. On the one-year anniversary of the rescue, the city of Chicago erected a small memorial plaque in Grant Park, near the spot where Dakota had stopped. It read, "On this site, police horse Dakota refused to move, leading to the rescue of Emma Rodriguez from a storm drain on May 14th. This memorial honors Dakota's heroism and reminds us that heroes come in all forms. Never underestimate the courage of those who serve." At the dedication ceremony, Emma, now 8 and healthy, read a poem she had written. "When I was lost in darkness deep, where shadows crawled and made me weep, an angel came on hooves so strong, she knew that I was there all along." Dakota stopped where others passed. She held her ground, she stood steadfast, until the people heard my cry, until they knew I was nearby. She couldn't speak with words like me, but love and courage set me free, a hero dressed in brown and white, who turned my darkness into light. There wasn't a dry eye in the crowd. Officer Daniel Morrison retired 2 years later, but he made sure Dakota retired with him. The department agreed to let him adopt her, and they moved to a small property outside the city where Dakota could enjoy her retirement in peace. Emma visited often, now old enough to take riding lessons on the horse who had saved her life. On quiet mornings, Morrison would stand in the pasture watching Dakota graze, and he would think about that Tuesday in May when she refused to move. He thought about all the what-ifs. What if he had forced her forward? What if he had called for a trailer to take her back to the stables? What if he hadn't trusted her instinct? But Dakota had known. Somehow, she had known. And because she refused to move, because she stood her ground and trusted herself, a little girl got to grow up, graduate from school, pursue her dreams, and tell her own children one day about the horse who saved her life. That's the thing about heroes. They come in the most unexpected forms. Sometimes they wear badges, sometimes they wear fur, and sometimes they wear hooves and have the courage to simply stand still when everything inside says to move forward. Dakota's story became more than just a rescue. It became a reminder that we should listen when those we trust try to tell us something. That instinct and intuition matter, and that the bonds between humans and animals are deeper and more meaningful than we often acknowledge. In a world that often feels dark and uncertain, Dakota reminded everyone that there is still goodness, still heroism, and still miracles waiting to happen if we're patient enough to stand still and pay attention. The police horse who refused to move didn't just save one life that day. She reminded a city, a nation, and eventually the world what it truly means to serve, to protect, and to never give up on those who need us most. And somewhere in that pasture, as the sun set on another peaceful evening, Dakota grazed contentedly, perhaps not fully understanding the magnitude of what she had done, but knowing in her heart that she had done exactly what she was meant to do. She had stood her ground, she had trusted her instincts, and she had saved a life. That's all any hero can ever hope to do.